To make the acorn charm, you're only going to need a few beads. I've got some size 15 seed beads in a galvanised matte gold. I've got some size 11 Delicas. These are matte opaque espresso. I've got a 9x7mm drop, and I've got a 4x6mm bronze rondelle that I'm going to use for the cap on the top of the acorn. So I've got 1.5 meters of Nymo. This is dark brown that I'm using, and I've tied a keeper bead about 15 centimeters or so from the end of the thread. Keeper bead's just a contrasting bead to stop the first couple of rows sliding off, and I'm just using a size 10 needle. To make the acorn, we're going to start by threading the drop bead on, narrow end to wide end, and bring that down the bead, down the thread, and we're then going to add 10 size 15s. 7, 8, 10. We're then going to go back through the drop bead in the same direction again, and what that will do is it will bring a strap of beads to sit around the side of the drop. So we've got 10 beads there. We're going to repeat this until we've got 10 straps of 10 beads in total. So we'll just keep going here. Two. Okay, so there we can see we've got 10 straps of beads sitting around the circumference of the drop bead that was in the middle. You can see it covers the bead pretty well, but there's still quite a few gaps. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some little short rows onto every other strap of beads just to fill the gaps. So to do that, we're going to go through 2 beads on the top of one of the strands, like so. And this is why it's important to make sure you can get through all your beads comfortably. Let's just, got my thread caught there, so let's just get rid of that loop. I'm then going to pick up 5 beads, and one fell off, 5 beads, and then through the same strap that we've gone up, I'm going to come back down through the last 3 beads on that strap. 1, 2, 3, like so. And what that does is it just creates a little bit of extra width across the centre of the fattest part of the drop, like so. I'm then going to take the needle back up through the drop, and I'm going to repeat that on every other strap. So not this one that's next to it, but the one after that. So through 2, pick up 5, and then down through the last 3 on that same strap. And we're going to do this, so we're going to add 5 short straps, which will just fill out the centre of the acorn. And up. Now, if you find that your beads are a little bit full of thread or that it's getting a bit tricky to pass through, then just switch down to a finer needle. So as I said at the beginning of the video, I'm using a size 10. If you need to go down to a size 12, then do. You shouldn't need to go down any finer than that, but if you do, then do just take your time and make sure that these straps are lying nice and flat. Okay, and one last one. So through the top 2, add 5, through the bottom 3. Like so, and then I'm just going to bring the needle back up so that it's coming out the top of the work. Now, as you can see there, it's starting to look reasonably acorn shape, but we've got this little gap on the bottom that we want to fill. So to do that, I'm going to take my needle off the working end of the thread. I'm going to take the keeper bead off the tail, and I'm going to thread the needle. And then I'm just going to pick up 3 more beads. 3 more beads. And I'm going to come up through that hole in the centre there with my needle. And it'll just pull those 3 beads up into a picot. You might just need to give it a little tweak with your needle. And it just hides the bottom of the acorn. It just hides the hole in the bottom. Okay, we'll move that thread, we'll take the needle back off that one and we'll put it back onto the long end of the thread. So what we're going to do now is we're going to make the cap that sits around the top of the acorn. And we're going to do this by adding a set of beads that are going to sit on top of each strap of beadwork that we've added here. So we're going to come down both sides of the short strap and on the single straps. So I'm going to start by picking up 4 of the Delicas beads. Oops. And then I'm going to count down 4 beads from the top of the strap, and I'm going to start one with a plain strap, one that we didn't split. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to go up through that 4th bead. I'm going to pull that tight so it sits on top of the 15s underneath, and then I'm going to go back up through the first 3 Delicas that I added there, like so. And again, I'm going to pick up 4 Delicas, and this time I'm coming down one of the split straps. So we've got 2 beads at the top, and then I'm going to come down 2 beads on one side of the split strap. And again, I'm coming from the bottom of the acorn back towards the cap. And then I'm going to go through the 3 beads at the top. Okay, and pull that. You want to pull it reasonably tight so that you've got no thread showing. It will be a little bit gappy at this point, but we are going to fix that. So I'm just going to keep going all the way round. So coming through that one, and we're going to add 20 short straps of Delicas to the top of the acorn. So we'll just keep going all the way around. So, don't worry if they're not all perfectly in line, because nature is generally a fan of wobbly lines. So just take your time, make sure you go through all the beads and you don't catch your thread. Just make sure it's reasonably tight. And And then one final strap here, 3, 4, and we're going to go through this one. And back up to the top of that strand there. There we go, we've got all the strands around the top of the cap now. As you can see, it still looks a bit baggy and a bit saggy. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use a ladder stitch to connect the top bead of all of these together. So to do this, I'm coming out of this top one here. I'm going to go into the top bead on the next bead around. I'm going to go back up the bead I've just come out of. And back down that second bead again. Then I'm going to go up the top of the next bead along. Back down the one that we've just come out of. And back up. I'm going to do this all the way around to connect the top of all of those straps that we've just put on with the Delicas. And there, so as you can see, that's neatened up the top of the acorn really nicely. And now we just need to decrease it to make sure that it's nice and snug for when we put the rondelle on the top. So we're going to do this by doing a brick stitch with a decrease around the top. So I'm going to start by picking up 2 beads, as you always start brick stitch, and I'm going to find the thread between the next pair of beads along, like so. Now if you want a different video on brick stitch, we have got a basic introduction to brick stitch on the YouTube channel, so it's worth having a look at that. So that's a pair. I'm then going to add a single stitch, and I'm going to do a decrease stitch. So instead of coming under the next thread around, I'm going to skip that one and come under the thread of the next bead, like so. I'm then going to do a regular stitch, so under the next bead around. And then the next stitch around, be a decrease again, so skip one and under. Just make sure you're going through the top thread so that your bead sits in the right place. And you're going to do this all the way around the top, so you're going to do a regular stitch and a decrease stitch to add 10 Delicas. So I'm on a regular stitch there, and then we'll skip one and do a decrease. And again, we've got a regular stitch. And a decrease. And then to join these last 2 together, you're going to come down through the top bead, from the top of the first bead you added, catch the thread underneath, and then go back up through the bead you've just gone down. And there is our basic acorn shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, whoops, not throw my work around. I'm going to leave the tail thread, and I'm actually going to finish off this working thread. So to do that, I'm going to go down through a couple of beads at the top, and then I'm going to tie a knot by looping underneath the strap and going back through the bead like so, and just make sure that knot sits down in between a few beads. I'm going to go down through a few beads, and then what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to jump from the Delicas back into the 15s of the body of the acorn, and again I'm going to tie another knot there, and I'm going to go through another couple of beads. Now I'm going down a split strap here, so I'm just going to take my time and make sure I go through the right beads. Alright, I'm not going to get through those beads again, so don't force them, because if you force them you could break your work, break your beads, and at this point that will ruin what you're doing. So I'm just going to skip over to the other side of the strand, and there we go, my needles pass through those much more easily. And then I'm going to trim this, cut this thread end off here. Okay, so to make this into a dangle, you've got your keeper, the thread that had your keeper bead on, which I've just got caught underneath there, is coming up through the middle of the drop bead. So I'm just going to thread the needle there. Now my thread has just got caught, so I'm just going to go from the back. I'm going to use the eye of the needle, and I'm just going to back it through so that I'm coming out through the middle of the acorn, so everything else hangs straight. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the 4x6 rondelle on the top there, and what you'll find is it will just nestle into that gap at the top of the acorn. I'm then going to add a couple more of the Delica beads, and then just to finish this off I'm going to add a gold size 6, which was my keeper bead. I'm going to make a little picot with 3 beads and come back down through all of those beads that I've just added and down through the middle of my acorn, so that I'm coming out at the bottom. Oops, I just unthreaded my needle. I'll just pull on that like so. Make sure those beads sit in a picot there, and then just rethread my needle. I'm going to go round the beads in this picot and back up through the middle, through the crystal. I have to do this a little bit by feel now, and let's come out by the, where am I going? Right by the side of that crystal, and back through these beads a second time just to reinforce them. So through there. And I'm just pinching the thread below the eye of the needle just to try and stop me unthreading the needle by accident. And back through. And we'll come back down through again just to make sure it's all nice and secure. And then I'll finish off this thread end in the same way as I did the other one. And through there, and let's try and get through a few beads there. Again, I've picked one that's already quite full. So there we go. And then I'm just going to trim that tail. And there we have our little acorn charm. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I can't wait to see what you do with yours.